Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Baltany S4105. This watch is available from Baltany.com for $259 which is €225 respectively. The watch is available in the following colour options: sapphire blue, volcano grey, bordeaux red and jungle green respectively. It's also available in two-tone versions in gold and steel. Of the colour options, I think this sapphire blue version is the best looking. So firstly, let's look at the watch roll that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch roll which is housed inside this outer charcoal grey watch box. On the lid to the sleeve we have the Baltany text logo in gilt. There's a nylon fabric pull which makes it easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb and withdraw the drawer from the cardboard sleeve. So this is the watch roll which I'll take out and show you. Vinyl PU leather watch roll. It's grained finish and matte, so it does give the impression of genuine leather, albeit it is made from vinyl or PU leather. Good attention to detail because in the lower right corner we have the Baltany text logo embossed. There's also straps securing it, and that's secured onto this brass rivet. So one undoes the strap. Excellent stitching either end of it, and inside there is this profiled piece of vinyl or PU leather. The purpose of this is it goes in between the case back and the bracelet clasp, and it prevents the clasp from rubbing against the case back in shipping and scuffing and scratching it. So good attention to detail, and I like it. Baltany deserve credit here. They could have taken the less expensive default option of just using a plastic or cardboard watch box, bearing in mind it's a low tier price point piece at €225, but this vinyl PU leather watch roll is aesthetically pleasing and it's good quality. So with regards to the items that come with the piece, it also comes with this chocolate brown envelope, which again is branded with Baltany in gilt. So I'll take out the items and show you what it houses. It houses three items. Plastic warranty card branded with Baltany in gilt, very aesthetically pleasing. On the reverse, there's space to fill in the retailer code, date of purchase, and it's stamped by Baltany Watch Co Limited. I want to give due credit to Baltany here and also their sister brand Miller Fortic, because they always stamp their warranty cards and also fill in the date of purchase in order to activate the 2-year international warranty from the date of purchase. It also details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty, and there's also their contact email should you wish to make a warranty claim during the 2-year period, support@baltany.com. Often low-tier Chinese brands between €0 and €500 price point do not stamp and fill in their warranty cards, therefore the warranty is effectively invalid. And I like this about Baltany Miller Fortic, the fact they always stamp it and fill it in. And also I want to give due credit to Baltany here, because often low-tier Chinese brands only cover their watches with a 12-month international warranty, which is the industry standard for low-tier pieces, but Baltany provide 2 years, which is exceptional at this price point, €225. 2 years of international warranty is the industry standard for mid-tier pieces between €500 and €5,000, but one rarely sees 2 years of warranty on a low-tier piece. So one also gets this owner's instruction manual booklet. It's bilingual, both in Chinese and English. Clear, concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber NH38A automatic. One also gets this Baltany branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. And one also gets this Baltany branded spring bar tool. Good attention to detail, nice to see it branded with Baltany. The Miller Fortic sister brand versions are sterile, they're unsigned, but Baltany always print Baltany on their spring bars, which is good. So, resin plastic body, 2 mild steel tips, which are nickel plated to look like stainless steel, but they are actually made from mild steel. Precision ground 2-prong fork, which does suffice if you want to exchange the oyster style bracelet for an alternative strap. And at the other end we've got a push pin, as you can see, and rubber cap protects it. So nice to see that's included. And lastly, one also gets this 1.6mm flathead jeweler screwdriver. Knurled shank, and it's mild steel, which is nickel plated to give the appearance of stainless steel, but it's actually mild steel. Hardened tool steel tip, which is precision ground, and it's replaceable, which is good if it becomes blunt or alternatively damaged. And on the end we've got a rotating cap with knurled head, large chamfer which deletes the tips of the knurling, and this is good, it fits into the palm of the hand well, and then one can precisely rotate it clockwise and anti-clockwise, getting good purchase on the knurled shank with one's index finger and thumb. So it's a good quality 1.6mm flathead jeweler screwdriver. Good to get that included for resizing the oyster style links in the oyster style bracelet. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 39mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47.5mm, a thickness of 12.6mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The Oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp, so we have the perfection personified 20 to 16 taper, which is the industry standard, and it is the perfect taper for a 39 head of the piece. 2-button push clasp is brushed satin finished on the body with a beautiful lustre, signed with Baltany with high definition engraving, and that complements the brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition between the body and the flanks, and it's solid 316L grade stainless steel. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge. The corners have been deburred very well, so no sharp corners, and the undercuts to the flanks have nice curvature, and they're also deburred and chamfered well, so no sharp edges. Excellent. 4 micro adjustment holes does suffice in the absence of half links. I'd like to see Baltany upgrade this Oyster style bracelet with a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet. That would further enhance the fit, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full link from an Oyster style bracelet does not give the desired fit. Therefore, half links on the 6 and 12 side are beneficial. Also, in the absence of micro adjustment, with a micro adjustment ratcheting clasp, it would be beneficial if they used a longer clasp with 5 micro adjustment holes versus the minimum 4. However, on a positive note, 4 micro adjustment holes in the flanks does give effectively half a link of adjustment, so one can get the perfect fit. If you can't get it by adding or subtracting one full Oyster style link, you can refine the half link of adjustment simply by using the 4 micro adjustments. We have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the glare anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and silver mirror polished handset. What I like about this piece is, unlike many low-tier Chinese pieces, this does not use a boxed top hat double dome sapphire crystal. It uses a double dome sapphire crystal which almost looks flat, so it's got a very low dome to it. This is beneficial because it reduces the thickness of this piece down to only 12.6, and one has to be mindful that this is powered by the NH38A, which is a thicker calibre than the Rehaut 9015 and 9039 respectively. So Baltany have made the correct decision. Had they used the box top hat double dome sapphire crystal, that would have added 2mm of thickness to this piece, and it would have been in excess of 13, which would be far too thick. 200 meters also impresses me because often daily wear pieces like this only have 50 or 100 meters. It's very unusual to see 200 meters. That is dive watch level of water resistance. So screw down crown versus push-pull crown is strong specification, and a thicker sapphire crystal to provide 200 meters versus 100 meters. Strictly speaking, it does not need 200 meters for a daily wear piece. It is excessive, but it's a credit to Baltany for not cutting any specification and therefore cutting production costs in order to maximize profit margin per piece. It is more expensive to make a piece 200 meter water resistant. Screw down crown is necessary, and a thicker screw down case back is necessary, as well as a thicker sapphire crystal in order to withstand 200 meters of pressure. But although it's a thicker crystal, it doesn't add significant thickness as per a box top hat crystal. There is nice curvature to the edge of the crystal. Now I want to clarify something. This is not a box top hat crystal, despite the edge of it looking like one. The curvature of this crystal is actually called a fillet. So to clarify, a bevel is when you have a flat edge to a crystal, and rather like the flat profile to the bezel. And when you have a curved edge to the crystal, it's not called a chamfer and it's not called a bevel. It is referred to as a fillet. So this has got nice curvature to the edge of the crystal, which is a fillet profile. And the flat profile to the bezel is the correct choice. They could have used a domed bezel, but this piece really does have the aesthetic of a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, either the Oyster Perpetual in 39mm, alternatively the Oyster Perpetual 41, which is a piece I've previously owned and reviewed. I like the flat profiling of it because it contrasts with the fillet edge of the double dome sapphire crystal. So it looks almost flat because of the low dome, but it is actually curved. It's curved on the underside, curved on the top side. Good symmetry to the dial. What I like about this piece is a perfect symmetrical dial. So larger applied indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3. And then we have slimmer profile indices which are beveled for the other hour marks. The symmetry of the dial is excellent. The proportions of the larger 12, 9, 6 and 3 add interest, but they also give excellent legibility. Proportions of the hands is good. Now, what I like about it is the hands are also profiled with a taper. They're faceted rather than just being flat, which adds interest, but the other thing is they haven't just taken the default option of using baton hands as per a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, because that would make it too similar to an Oyster Perpetual, and then one would say, well, it's an homage to the Oyster Perpetual. So the hands aren't baton hands, they're slightly tapered, and that complements the taper of the indices. Again, the indices aren't rectangles, and of course the 12, 9, 6 and 3 have a more taper on them, and they look more like a point or an arrowhead, so very aesthetically pleasing, almost like an Aquaterra index on the dial. That's the kind of shape they've gone for, so very aesthetically pleasing. Just bear with me, I'm going to move the minute hand out of the way of the text so you can see it better at 6 o'clock. What I like about the dial as well is the balance, because we simply have the Baltany text logo at 12 o'clock, and then we have 2 lines of text, automatic 660 feet equals 200M. Just the right amount of information. Often low-tier Chinese brands and micro brands have a tendency to overbrand the dial with unnecessary text and specification, therefore it looks too busy and cluttered. And this diminishes the aesthetics of the piece. This looks clean. That's what I like about it. It's minimalist. There's no date complication. 2 lines of text, looks balanced. The dial does not look too busy and cluttered. It is easy to read. Legibility is good, and it's just a very good looking dial. Quality of the printing on the dial is stellar. White minute ticks are clearly indexed. What I like about it is next to the indices we have larger white minute ticks for the hours, and then slimmer white minute ticks for the minutes. Quality of the printing is high definition and crisp, and that's very difficult to do on a textured dial like this because it's a gradient dial. It has a sunray texture to it, or sunray pattern to it, but I like the way it graduates in colour because it's a lighter navy blue in the centre, and then at the circumference it's a darker navy blue around the chapter ring. And when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see 2 things. You can see it's a sunray dial rather than just being matte textured, but you can also see the textured finish of the dial, which is just absolutely mesmerising. This does not look to me like a low tier dial. This does not say to me low tier Chinese piece between €0 and €500. The quality of the dial execution says to me mid-tier between €500 and €5,000. They've actually done a very good job of the printing of the dial. So it's not a glossy enamel finish dial, and it's not a matte texture dial either. It's a sunray dial, but in addition to the sunray blue, we've also got this 3D textured effect to it because it's pressed. The dial is actually pressed, not smooth. So I actually like the textured finish, the way it refracts the light rather than reflecting it, and also like the sunray pattern to the blue, the way it changes from the light blue to a darker navy blue. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It adds interest. For example, they could have just used a glossy blue navy blue dial, a textured navy blue dial, or simply a matte navy blue dial, but they've done something different. It's textured, but also has a sunray rather than matte finish to it, so it has this reflective property. And I absolutely love the way it changes colour in the light, and you can see the way the textures or the pressed 3D effect of the dial catches the light. Just beautiful. Despite it being textured rather than smooth, the printing of Baltany and the text automatic 660 feet equals 200M is crisp, it's sharp, it's high definition, because often the problem low tier and mid tier brands have when they print text on a textured dial, because it's not smooth, the actual text letters, they don't look flat, they look wavy. And of course this doesn't look quality, but Baltany have got it really good. This is Rolex level printing of Baltany automatic 660 feet equals 200M. It really is Rolex, Tudor or Omega level printing. The dial execution, the quality of the printing of the white paint on the dial, both the minute ticks on the chapter ring, Baltany text logo and the other text, it's really sharp. It's fine. That's what I like about it. The font is thin, it's fine, it's crisp, it's high definition, it's not too thick and blurry. This is something that Baltany do better than other low tier Chinese brands. Quality of the mirror polishing to the applied indices is fantastic. They're faceted rather than just being block-like or rectangular. And what I like about it is the bevels are mirror polished. So quality of the polishing on the indices is done to a very high level. It's rather like the applied indices on a Grand Seiko heritage piece. That's the quality of polishing we're looking at. Faceted hands are also mirror polished to a very high standard. And what I like about them is the proportion, because the minute hand is long enough to extend nearly to the minute ticks on the chapter ring. The hour hand extends nearly to the applied indices, and the second hand is long enough to extend to the chapter ring. So the hands are long enough. They're also wide enough. They don't look too slender. Often low-tier Chinese brands make baton hands too slender and too short. These are wide and long enough for the proportion of the dial. So dial is mesmerising, applied indices are excellent, and also quality of the printing is excellent. Hands are finished to perfection. So, flat bezel, solid 3160 grade stainless steel. They've made the correct decision by not using a domed profile to the bezel because we've got enough curvature with the fillet edge of the sapphire crystal versus a beveled edge, as I've detailed. Mirror polishing to the top profile of the flat stainless steel bezel is stellar, absolutely flawless. Edge of it is also mirror polished, which complements the mirror polished flanks of the case. Longitudinal brush satin finishing to the tops of the lugs, which perfectly matches the profiling of the female Poutilene links. What I like about it is the quality of the finishing here is mid-tier level on a low-tier price point piece. Brush satin finishing on the female Poutilene links has a nice fine-grained satin finish. They're a nice tight fit to the head of the piece, but the profiling is fantastic. Because if you look at the curvature, the profiling of the lugs, it perfectly matches the curvature, the profiling of the end links. The end links are a perfect fit, and I really like the style because, as you can see, the tips of the lugs project beyond the female Poutilene links. Now, this is a detail which is often seen with Rolex pieces such as the Oyster Perpetual, and I like it because it does give a very tight fit to the wrist. When you have female Poutilene links like this, the end link in the bracelet can pivot beneath, as per a Tudor Black Bay 58, for example, or Black Bay 54. That's the benefit because you get a nice snug fit, but what they've done here is they fully maximised the benefit of this. The end link pivoting beneath the tip of the lug to give a snug fit, because by having these end links recessed slightly back from the front of the lugs, what that does is it pulls the pivot point closer to the head of the piece, closer to the dial. That's the point I'm making. So what you get is you get the full benefit because the end link can then pivot below the lugs, as you can see. When you have the spring bar closer to the dial, what it does is it actually pulls the pivot point closer, so you get this nice snug fit. The end link can fully articulate beneath the case, like so. So even if you have a very small wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you're going to get the full maximum benefit of this snug fit. It's fantastic. And that's the kind of attention to detail I like with Baltany. Rolex do it, albeit Rolex use male end links on that Oyster Perpetual. But with female Poutilene links, you get the maximum benefit of it, of the female, the pivot point being closer to the case versus the bracelet. So good to see that. Very, very good attention to detail. So, brush satin finishing to the top of the lugs. Nice, large, crisp transitions. Now, they don't have large bevels on the transitions, but they have deburred it nicely because there's a crisp edge on the transition, but it's not sharp. That's the point. Mirror polished flanks are done to perfection. Now, what I like about it is the case shape on this piece is peak Baltany. Make no mistake about it, this is one of the greatest Baltany cases they have ever made. I have reviewed a plethora of Baltany pieces over the last 5 years. I can tell you, this S4105 is one of the greatest cases Baltany have ever made. In terms of case profiling, the curvature of the case, both on the top of the lugs and the undercuts to the flanks, this visually does look very similar to a Rolex case as used on the Oyster Perpetual 41, for example. And I really like it because it's not thick, it's not slab-sided, it's not like a block of 3160 grade stainless steel, a rectangular slab. What we have here is perfect curvature. Beautiful curvature to the top of the case, and then on the undercuts we've got a deep undercut which gives nice curvature to the undercut to the flank, and of course that reduces the meat of the case. The flank doesn't visually look slab-sided as per a Tudor Black Bay Heritage, for example, which has a very tall slab-sided case. This really does remind me of Rolex case finishing. It does look like an Oyster Perpetual case, and it's absolutely beautiful because we've got a nice domed profile or curved profile which is concave. Sorry, convex actually, because it curves outwards. Concave curves inwards. So it's a nice curvature because it curves outwards. So they haven't just made the flank of the case a flat profile as per Tudor Black Bay 58 or Tudor Black Bay Heritage, which has slab sides which are flat. This has a curved profile to it. And I really like that convex profile because visually it does reduce the meat, but it actually makes it look very thin and aesthetically pleasing because we've got this nice curvature to the undercuts, and then when you look at the piece at the edge, you can see it's got this nice curvature outwards, and it's just a refinement that one doesn't see in the low tier very often. It's very rare, and rather than just having a flat profile to the flanks, it's got this curvature. It really does remind me of a Rolex case. So, Case is finished to perfection. Let's look at the end links and bracelets in detail. Female Poodle end links articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink, which is the benefit. Sublime fit. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side, up and down play. Interference, friction fit. Excellent. Bracelet is finished to perfection. In terms of luster, this is similar to Rolex, Tudor or Omega brushed satin finishing. To the top side and the underside of the oyster style bracelet. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. Flawless mirror polishing to the flanks, and they've made the correct decision because they've mirror polished the flanks to match the mirror polishing of the flanks of the head of the piece. Doesn't pull arm hairs. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. It's a very fluid bracelet, so very good in terms of comfort level and feel good factor. It's not sloppy, doesn't rattle, doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side play. This is the benefit of using 1.6mm screw pins versus push pins as a production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece. Nothing I like about the links is correct decision after correct decision because the links aren't too thick. Often low-tier Chinese brands will use the Perfection Personified 20 to 16 taper, but then they make the links too thick. And the problem is, although they have the correct taper, there's too much meat on the bracelets, it's far too thick. These links, in terms of thickness, in terms of profiling, at the spring bar end or the head of the piece end down to the clasp, they have the same thin profiling. So they don't need to be tapered, they're not thicker at the lugs and they're not thinner at the clasp, they're even. But the point is, they're nice and slender, rather like a Rolex Oyster bracelet. So they've got the thickness of the links perfected. And I really like the taper, Perfection Personified, as you know. So let's check the other side for continuity. Female pigtail link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Plenty of articulation, fantastic. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side or up and down play. Perfect interference fit. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. Brushed satin finishing is Rolex level, beautiful luster to it. It's something that Baltany do very well. The brushed satin finishing has a nice fine grained satin finish. It's not coarse or rough, and it's a level above other low-tier Chinese brands. Mirror polishing to the flanks is also done to perfection, no flaws whatsoever. Stellar. So excellent bracelet, doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side play. Comfort level and feel good factor are therefore maximised. So let's test the screw down crown execution. Screw down crown, solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished, large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth, and it is engraved with a Baltany B emblem. I'll just turn it round the other way up so you can see it correctly. That's the right way up for the B. So they've engraved it with a Baltany B, which is good. And I'm pleased to see they didn't use the production cost cutting measure of making it sterile and unsigned. Nice to see it engraved. Mirror polished cap is good. High definition engraving, doesn't feel sharp or rough. Correctly proportioned. It's not too large. Despite being 200 meters versus 100 meters, which is strong specification, they haven't just simply used a dive watch crown on a daily wear piece, because of course a dive watch crown would be too large and the proportion would be incorrect. This is large enough to be grippy and tactile and get good purchase on with one's index finger and thumb, but when you flex the wrist, as I'll show you in the wrist shot, it doesn't dig into the back of the hand, so it's the correct size for a 39mm head of the piece. Let's test screwing it unscrewing it. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. It's just fantastic. They could not improve upon this. Quality control, builds quality, tolerances and machining are there. If I had to choose one word to describe this, it would be refinement. It is stellar. This is as silky smooth as a Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41 screw down crown, and I've previously reviewed and owned that piece, and I can tell you, this is as silky smooth as a Rolex twin lock crown used on the Oyster Perpetual. It's silky smooth. Fantastic interface between the threads. It just feels sublime. So, Seiko Calibre NH38A. Benefit is there is no phantom date setting position. There's only one click on the crown. When it's unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the Calibre NH38A to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. Feels smooth. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to 41 hours. There's no discernible difference between manually winding the NH38A and the NH35A because the architecture is the same. Seiko just delete the date complication and delete the phantom date setting position, but other than that, the movement architecture is identical. And of course, the manual winding feels the same. So it feels smoother to manually wind than a PT5000 or an SW200-1. Feels similar to manually winding a 9015 or 9039, albeit it does have more friction in it, and it's not as smooth and refined. So the 9015 and 9039 are smoother, but does feel smoother to manually wind than an SW200-1 and a PT5000. Also feels smoother, although albeit more resistance, than an 8000 series Miyota, such as the 8215 and 8315 respectively, which you may be familiar with. So I like it, feels good, just like an NH35A. Putting it out to the first click position is the final click, because there's no phantom date setting position. So you can see it has hacking, so I can set the time precisely to the second. Feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise, and there's no discernible difference between the NH35A date version and this NH38A no date version. There is some backplay in the gearing, but as I've detailed in my previous reviews, and I'll reiterate it for the benefit of those of you that haven't heard that, there is a mechanical need and necessity for some backplay in the meshing of the gearing of the winding gears, and I'll explain why. Because if the teeth of the winding gear in the movement meshed perfectly, without any backplay, without any slack, the problem with that is, when you push the crown back in and the winding stem re-enters the calibre, it would cause the winding gears to jump out of position because of the perfect tight meshing of the teeth. So in order to prevent that, what they do is they machine bevels on the gear teeth, and that increases the tolerances. So there's some slight gap between the teeth in the winding gears, and that allows for some backplay in the movement. And the benefit of that is when the crown is pushed back in and the winding stem re-enters the movement, it doesn't cause the gears to jump out of position and cause the minute hand to move clockwise or anti-clockwise and jump. So as you can see, when one sets the time and pushes the crown and winding stem back in, the minute hand remains static because the winding gears also remain static due to the backplay taking up the slack. So there is a mechanical need or necessity for it. Therefore, I'm not going to be critical of some backplay. In terms of backplay, there is more backplay in the gearing versus a 9015 or 9039, which is tighter, and it's similar to a SW200-1, a P024, or an ETA 284-2. In terms of backplay, when you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, you do need to take up some slight slack. There's an almost immediate response, but you do have to take up some slack. I prefer the 9015 because there's less, and also prefer the 9039, but this is just a characteristic of the NH38A and the NH35A respectively, the backplay and the gearing. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the needle point second hand begins to sweep around the dial, and the characteristic 3 Hz sweep. Now, subjectively, the negative is, and you'll know this from my previous reviews, I dislike the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz sweep running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. I prefer the smoother 4 Hz sweep of a movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, as per the SW200-1 or the 9015, for example. That's just a characteristic of the NH35A and the NH38A, respectively, the stutter or judder of the 3 Hz sweep. But however, I appreciate it's not detrimental. For the majority of collectors, they are accustomed to it, and therefore it's something they can live with. I personally prefer 4 Hz, but 3 Hz and the stutter and judder is just the way it is. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. This is sublime screw down crown execution. This is fantastic. This is one of the best thread pickups in terms of the mating of the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The way the threads mate, the way they pick up is instant. This is stellar. This is something that Baltany do better than many other low-tier Chinese brands. To put this into perspective, you don't need to rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise several times to get the threads to pick up. You are all familiar with this. With low-tier Chinese brands between €0 and €500 price points, sometimes the crowns feel rough or gritty, they feel stiff. The threads do not mesh, they do not pick up, they do not mate correctly. So you have to clockwise and anti-clockwise turn the crown several times to get the threads to pick up. And they just feel stiff, they feel rough, they feel gritty. This one feels silky smooth. When you rotate the crown on this one, clockwise, it immediately picks up with the external thread of the crown tube instantly. First time, every single time. 10 out of 10 times it picks up. This is fantastic. Something that Baltany do better. And in terms of smoothness, there is no discernible difference between the smoothness of this crown and a Rolex twin lock crown used on the Oyster Perpetual. It's just an absolute pleasure to use, and the refinement is just there. So when I screw it down, instantly it picks up. and it just feels silky smooth. It doesn't feel too loose and it doesn't feel too tight. The balance is perfected. This is as smooth as a Rolex twin lock crown. It's just fantastic. And at this price point, €225, it is very unusual to see that mid-tier level of refinement because it's a low-tier piece. Right, so let's look at the clasp in detail. Solid mill 3160 grade stainless steel clasp, milled body versus pressed. Nice heavy gauge to it. I like the mirror polished bevels. 2 button push triggers are mirror polished on the top and the low edge, and then they're brush satin finished on the flanks to match the flanks, which is good. Heavily sprung loaded. Solid mill 3160 grade stainless steel internals. Flawless brush satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the flanks, which is good. The undercuts are deburred. Centre section doesn't have any sharp corners. Stainless steel is engraved the correct way up, which is good. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Doesn't have excess play. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Finally, right hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Tight. Excellent. Left hand, centre and right hand hinge pins all have friction interference fits. They are correct. Pleasant surprise. It's not sloppy, doesn't have any sharp edges, beautiful lustre to it. Fantastic. I really like it. Snap sharp with a nice positive click. Heavily sprung loaded triggers, feel reliable and robust. Opens freely. This is an excellent clasp. I really like the proportions of it. Fantastic. Now, subjectively, one could say, well, I'd like to see Baltany lengthen it and have 5 micro adjustment holes versus 4. I'd like to see a half link on the 6 and the 12 side. And I'd also like to see an upgrade to a micro adjustment ratcheting clasp or glide lock style clasp, because that would further enhance it with on the fly adjustment, but it's good quality. Let's look at the case back in detail. Solid 3160 grade stainless steel case back, concentric CNC lathe tool machined. I like the way it refracts the lights rather than reflecting it, as per a mirror polished case back, as per Tudor and Rolex. Coin edge finish to it around the circumference, and the coin edge teeth has been deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges. What I like about it is, and this is a pleasant surprise, this is one of the thinnest case backs I've seen on a 200 metre NH38 powered piece, and I'll apply the same to an NH35A powered piece, because often they have deep bubble back case backs. For example, you'll all be familiar with the deep bubble back case backs used on dive pieces with 200 metres, and of course it is necessary because the NH35A and NH38A respectively are thicker calibers, and of course the rotor does need additional clearance to prevent the rotor fouling the underside of the case back, regardless of whether it's an exhibition case back or a solid stainless steel case back like this one. They do need clearance, and often brands will use bubble back case backs in order to provide 200 metres of hermetic seal plus enough clearance for the rotor. This is a credit to Baltany. This is actually very flat, and one has to appreciate we're not looking at a 50 or 100 metre water resistant piece here. This is 200 metres like a dive watch. But look how flat the case back is. Now, if this were powered by the 9015 or the 9039, which are thinner calibers, or the SW200-1, which is thinner, this would not impress me, because I would say, well, they're thinner calibers, they don't need so much clearance around the rotor. A flat case back is possible, even with 200 metres and a thicker case back. But this is a very low profile case back, rather like a 9015 or 9039 power piece, not an NH38. It's very flat in the centre, not a deep bubble back case back. Now, if this were 100 metres, it wouldn't impress me, but 200 does impress me because the case back needs to be thicker. Fantastic. So looks good. Now, the benefit is it's very smooth. It's sterile. There's no engraving. There's no embossing. It's not a forged case back with deep debossing or embossing. So therefore, it's not rough. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor. So by using a sterile Rolex or Tudor style case back like this maximises comfort level. This is a very comfortable piece to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. And I like that it's low profile because I'll show you in the wrist shot the benefit. This piece sits very snug to the wrist. Comfort level and feel good factor are therefore maximised. Now, female pivoted links are a nice tight fit to the head of the piece. They have used standard stainless steel spring bars. This could be further enhanced with quick release stainless steel spring bars because that would negate the need for a spring bar tool, but they have included a spring bar tool nonetheless if one wants to exchange the oyster style bracelet for a strap, but quick release stainless steel spring bars would be a notable enhancement. Underside to the head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to perfection, beautiful lustre to it. What I like about it is large mirror polished bevels on the undercuts to the flanks. This is very aesthetically pleasing, but it also serves a purpose because it deletes the sharp, crisp edge. So we don't have any razor sharp edge on the edge of the case, which is often the case with San Martin pieces you'll all be familiar with. This has a nice large mirror polish bevel, and the bevel deletes the sharp transition. And this means it doesn't scratch the wrist. Comfort level and feel good factor are therefore enhanced. 4 tips of the lugs have bevels, and this also deletes the sharp corners, so again it's not going to scratch the wrist. Comfort level of this case, which is Rolex Oyster Perpetual style, is stellar. So quality of the finishing to the head of the piece is fantastic, and really it's mid-tier level. We're not looking at low tier €0 to €500 price point finishing to the head of the piece. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. Initially, there looks like there's good potency to the exciter. We're looking at 5 to 6 layers on the handset and also the applied indices. Perfect symmetry, and there are larger area or larger plots on the 12, 9, 6 and 3. They are enlarged. They're triangular shaped, so of course they have a larger area. The 12, 9, 6 and 3 look brighter than the other indices. I think there's room for improvement here. We are looking at 5 to 6 layers, but I think they could apply more of it, because the BGW9 initially looks like it's got good potency, but I would say it's not as potent as it could be. I think they could maximise this, because you can see initially we do have potency, but you can see the point I'm making. The 12, 9, 6 and 3 look brighter than the other indices, so what that tells me is we've got more layers. We've got a full 6 layers on the 12, 9, 6 and 3, larger triangle indices, but if you look at the other indices, which are more like rectangles, they seem to have less layers. I think we're looking at 5 layers. Also, same applies to the hands. If you look at the hands, you can see there's an even application. So in daylight, the indices and the hands both look pure white. So they don't look whiter or creamer, which is good. But if you look now, you can see the 12, 9, 6 and 3 triangular shape indices are slightly enlarged, and the other indices are more rectangle shaped. The hands look slightly slender. I think what they could do here is make the hands wider, more like baton hands, which are rectangular shapes versus this tapered shape. And if they made them wider baton hands, they could apply a larger plot, a larger area of BGW9. With the hands, I think the problem is the area, the plots. They're not as wide as, for example, dive watch hands, Submariner hands such as Mercedes hands, or Tudor hands such as Snowflake hands, and of course the Oyster Perpetual has baton hands, also the Datejust. I think they could enlarge the width of the hands to make the area, the plot of BGW9 wider, and also apply an additional layer. So I think what we're looking at here is 5 to 6 layers on the 9, 6 and 3, 12, 9, 6 and 3. By the other indices, I think we're looking at 5 layers, because you can see it just doesn't look as bright. So it's good performance, but I think there's room for improvement. Baltany can do better than this, and I think this is the one negative subjectively I'm going to be critical of, because I just think this does need an extra layer on the other indices, and also I think the hands could be slightly enlarged to give it an extra layer, possibly 6. So you can see performance is good, but just not stellar. So I think they need to improve it. The 12, 9, 6 and 3 is good, and that's what I'd like to see on the rest of the indices and the hands. The same potency of the exciter as the 12, 9, 6 and 3 triangular indices. But it's okay. So the other thing I want to look at before I do the wrist shots is the Rehaut. Now, this is the one negative, the one thing I'd like to change about this piece. Baltany are capable of making pieces powered by the NH35A and the NH38 with slim Rehauts. I previously reviewed their Datejust homages, both the 36 and the 39mm versions. And the thing that really impressed me about those pieces, they were NH35A powered, which is a thick caliber like this NH38. But they were able to slim down the Rehauts, and they were able to slim it down to SW200- level, or alternatively 9015 or 9039 level, which is good for an NH35A power piece. But if you look at this Rehaut, it looks too deep. Now, to put this into perspective, the NH38A and the NH35A are thicker calibers. They do have a taller handstack height on the cannon pinion. Therefore, some additional clearance is needed above the top of the second hand on the cannon pinion, because if they did not have this deeper Rehaut, what would happen is the second hand would foul the underside of the double dome sapphire crystal. But however, I appreciate this is a 200 meter piece, we're not looking at a 100 metre piece. So therefore the sapphire crystal does need to be thicker, but nonetheless, the Rehaut doesn't need to be this deep. I think they've made the Rehaut slightly too deep. Yes, it's 200 metres, not 100. Yes, it does have a thicker crystal because of that. But even though this is NH38A powered, I think they could slim down the Rehaut. It's not going to be as slender as a an SW200-1 Rehaut or a 9015 or 9039. That's a given. But the reason why I say this is I have reviewed their Datejust homage, which was the 36mm, and that did have an NH35A, but it did have a lower profile Rehaut, and it was laser engraved with Baltany all the way round repeated, which of course further enhanced the piece. It was rather like Rolex laser engraved, Rolex repeated with a coronet. So they could do better. Now the other thing is, one has to appreciate this is €225. It's one of the more expensive Baltany pieces. And their Datejust homages, they have Baltany engraved around the Rehaut, laser engraved, but they're less expensive. And I think it's a production cost-cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece. They should have laser engraved Baltany all the way around, because that would give the piece a higher quality aesthetic, rather like a Rolex Oyster Perpetual or Datejust. And they haven't done it. They've deleted the laser engraving around this Rehaut, and it's slightly too deep. That's the negative I want you to be mindful of. So, now I'll do wrist shots. Just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report this does come with a very long bracelet. I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This indicates this would fit up to a very large wrist size of even 9 inches. Now to clarify, I'm on position 4 out of 4 on the micro adjustment holes in the flanks. This is at its absolute maximum limit, but nonetheless, 2 fingers, even though I have a large 8-inch wrist, I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath it. 9-inch is no problem whatsoever. There are enough removable links on the 6 and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size to a maximum 9-inch wrist size, as you can see. So even I would remove 3 links from this bracelet to 4 links to fit my 8-inch wrist, as you can see. Very long bracelet. But perfection personified taper, 20 to 16 is correct. And of course the benefit is, because it's 16mm at the clasp end, the clasp isn't too wide, it's not too bulky, and it doesn't stick out too proud from the wrist. Curvature of the clasp is good. Curvature is good for a 6 to 7 inch wrist. Curvature is equally good for a 7 to 8 inch wrist. The internal portion has good curvature. So you can see it wraps around the wrist very snugly. It's not a thick rectangular flat slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The internal portion of it, as you can see, this has good curvature for a 6 to 7 inch wrist and equally good curvature for a 7 to 8 inch wrist. The benefit is, unlike other low-tier Chinese brands with this kind of clasp, this portion is often far too thick and it's far too flat, too long and too block-like. And the problem is then one gets overhang on the ends of the clasp. It never sits snug to the wrist. This one does sit more snug to the wrist. It's not too thick and bulky, and of course one doesn't get long overhang with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches because it's not a long bulky clasp. Even the internals aren't too long. So they've made the correct decision by not making it too large, too bulky. Curvature is good. What I like about this piece is, although it does have a deep Rehaut, which I think they could slim down and ideally upgrade this to a 9039 with a lower hand stack height on the cannon pinion and a thinner caliber to make it thinner, this piece is surprisingly thin. Now one has to appreciate it does have a double dome sapphire crystal and it does have the fillet edge versus a beveled edge, as I've explained, but above all else, this is only 12.6. Now, needless to say, you'll know this from my previous reviews. Anything below 13mm is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. At 12.6, it's 0.4mm below the sweet spot. The fit of this piece is fantastic. Look at the curvature, the undercuts to the flanks of the case. This fits very snug around the wrist. It wraps around the wrist beautifully. Beautiful curvature to the top of the case, beautiful curvature to the undercuts to the flanks. And as I've detailed, what I like about the flanks is they're not flat slab-sided flanks as per a Tudor Black Bay 58 or Black Bay Heritage. They're not flat, they're curved. They are convex, so they curve outwards. And the convex profile to the flanks, rather than being flat profile, means it doesn't look slab-sided. This visually does have a similar case shape to the Oyster Perpetual, both the 39mm and the 41 version. I like that curvature of the flanks, I like the curvature of the undercuts, and the curvature of the top of the lugs. It's like a Rolex Oyster Perpetual case. Flat profile to the bezel, is the correct choice rather than domed. And I really like the mirror polishing, contrasting with the brushed satin finishing. Brushed satin finishing to the top of the lugs and the bracelet does give the piece a daily wear aesthetic versus a dress piece aesthetic. Had they mirror polished the top of the lugs, as per Datejust, it would have looked too shiny and reflective. And of course, polished top of the lugs works well when you have polished centre links, as per a Rolex Datejust. But when one has brushed satin finished top of the lugs, the centre links look better brushed satin finish to match, because if they mirror polished the centre links, that would have clashed with the top of the lugs. So they've made the correct decision with regards to finishing. Mirror polish flanks to the head, mirror polish flanks to the bracelet, brushed satin finish top of the lugs, brushed satin finish top of the bracelet. Correct. What I like about it is the double dome sapphire crystal has a very low dome to it. Rather than a box top pack crystal, which is 2mm thick, this is thinner, even though it's thicker due to the 200 meters of hermetic seal. You can see it in the centre section, it actually looks flat. So it's a very low dome, and I can confirm, although it does look flat, it's actually curved on the top and the underside. It is a double dome sapphire crystal, but it's deceptive because visually it's got this curved fillet edge to it versus a flat bevel on the edge of it. And the curved fillet edge makes it look more like a box top hat crystal, but one doesn't get the thickness, the height. So it's got the benefits, the aesthetic of an acrylic crystal or a plexiglass or Heslite domed crystal gives the piece a vintage aesthetic, but due to the low dome of it, it does look more practical for a daily wear piece. It's not a tall, thick box top hat crystal. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. The dial is just mesmerising. The gradient dial with the textured finish, the sunray finish to it, it's just fantastic. The way it changes from a lighter blue in the centre to a dark navy blue at the circumference or chaptering. Textured finish adds interest. I love the symmetry of the dial. The larger triangular 12, 9, 6 and 3 applied indices and the smaller, more rectangular other indices. Visually, it really does remind me of the Oyster Perpetual, the 39mm version, also the 41. It's got that kind of aesthetic to the case shape, the bezel, and also even the baton hands. I appreciate they're not strictly speaking baton hands because they're not rectangular, they're actually tapered, but that's the style. And the pointed 12, 9, 6 and 3 indices, they remind me of an Omega Aquaterra. That's the kind of style. So really it's like a blend of the two. It's like a blend of the Omega Aquaterra blended with the Oyster Perpetual 41. It's like a hybrid of the two, a mixture of the two elements, because we've got those pointed 12, 9, 6 and 3 Aquaterra style indices, but we've got the case shape of an Oyster Perpetual and of course Oyster style bracelet. So it's a nice blend of the two without being a direct homage of the Aquaterra or direct homage of the Oyster Perpetual. I think they've got it right. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous piece. Now, comfort level and feel good factor, stellar. What I like about this piece is it's only 148 grams. Now bear in mind it does have a very long bracelet. This is excessive, even on my large 8-inch wrist. So needless to say, even I would delete 4 links from this bracelet and that would reduce it to well below 135 grams. If you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you're going to be removing 6 links plus. If you have a 7 to 8-inch wrist, you're going to be removing 4 to 6 links. So I think that this bracelet is far too long, as you can see, but nonetheless, 148 grams, so needless to say, well below the 150 grams sweet spot for a 39 on an Oyster style bracelet. So 12.6 is low profile, that's good. Lug to lug is excellent. This is very close to the perfect sweet spot. 47.5 lug to lug is fantastic. You'll know from my previous reviews, 48mm lug to lug is the perfect sweet spot because 48 lug to lug fits all wrist sizes, 6 to 7 inch and also 7 to 8 inch wrists respectively. It's the perfect lug to lug. That's why it's the industry standard for 39, 14, 41 heads of pieces. At 47.5, it's just 0.5mm below the 48 sweet spot, so very close to perfection. Proportions of this Rolex style case are fantastic. 39 gives good wrist presence, 47.5 is just 0.5mm below the sweet spot, 20mm lug width is correct, and we've got the perfection personified 20 to 16 taper. Beautiful lustre to the bracelet, beautiful lustre to the head of the piece. It's just a great looking piece. It's just a shame that it doesn't have a more shallow Rehaut and it's not laser engraved with Baltany all the way round the 360 degrees as per their Datejust homages. They are capable of doing it, and it's detrimental really, the depth. I would like to see this piece updated to the 9039 and reduce the Rehaut and also laser engrave it, that would really take this piece up a level and it would fully justify the price point. But I think they're pushing it at €225 with this deep Rehaut. It's not engraved, plus it's slightly too deep. Right, so lastly I'll summarise the piece. Now just bear with me. Oh, sorry, I need to discuss the movement used actually, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So just bear with me, I'll put my Concord 40 back on and then I'll continue. So this is powered by the Seiko NH38 automatic, which is made in Malaysia. So to clarify, Seiko make the NH35A and the NH38, the Node 8 version, in two plants in Japan and Malaysia. Now, there's no difference in terms of build quality, quality control, materials and finishing between the Japanese-made versions and the Malaysian versions. This is made in Malaysia. So, 24 joules, runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which use for complications, and they work well, as I've demonstrated. No date complication, therefore no phantom date setting position, that's the benefit. 41-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. Stated accuracy of the NH38A is -20 to +40 seconds per day. So, a rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that this one has been very well regulated in 5 positions by Baltany to +6 seconds per day. +6 is actually within chronometer grade accuracy of -4 to +6. Excellent. Anything between plus and -10 is perfectly acceptable for an NH38A, and +6 is well within that, so it's well within the stated accuracy of -20 to +40. +6 is very good. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse calibre made in Malaysia. No negatives to it whatsoever. Its reliability is the thing I really like about it. Its durability and, of course, accuracy is good when it's regulated well in 5 positions. So +6 is good. 41-hour power reserve is good. Feels good to manually wind. Feels good to set the time. Hacking works well. It's a good choice. However, at €225, I think they're pushing it. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch will meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So, low tier piece, $259 US, which is €225. Low tier is €0 to €500. So, excellent quality piece, but there are 2 main negatives, and I want to remind you of. The quality of the BGW9, it needs an additional 1 to 2 layers. And I think they could improve upon that. They can make the hands wider, apply more BGW9, and on the other indices, the 12, 9, 6 and 3 are good, but the other indices, they need more layers. I'd like to see a full 6 layers of BGW9 on the hands and a full 6 layers on all the indices, not just the 12, 9, 6 and 3. The other negative is the depth of the Rehaut, and also that it's not laser engraved as per the date adjuster marges. They need to do that. So those are the things they need to refine with a V2 version. Now, €225, it's expensive. I think they're pushing it. If this were powered by the 9015 or the 9039 or even the 90S5, I would say yes, at €225, the movement would justify the price points. Because the quality control build quality is good, stellar screw down crown execution, quality of the header of the piece is mid-tier level, bracelet execution is fantastic, but the movement is the one thing that lets this down in terms of value. At €225, one would expect to see a higher grade of movement, either the 9015 or alternatively 9039. The 9039 would be the best choice because it has a low hand stack height on the cannon pinion. They could slim this piece down by 1mm. If this were powered by the 9039, this would only be 11.6 versus 12.6. 12.6 is okay. It's good for an NH38A powered piece with 200 meters, but really, this should be 11.6 with the 9039. So they need to upgrade the movement. And then the other benefit is they could slim down the Rehaut by 1mm. And it's too deep at the moment, but they could slim 1mm off it and it would still be 200 meters. And they could use the same 200 meter thick double dome sapphire crystal. But the piece would only be 11.6. That's the point I'm making. So I think we need to see a movement upgrade here at 225. Alternatively, Baltany need to reduce the price of this piece, ideally below €200, because 225 is too expensive. I think the sweet spot for value of this piece would be €150 with the NH38A. If it were 9039, I would say €200, but 225 I think is too expensive without a micro adjustment clasp. Really, it needs a micro adjustment clasp at 225 to be considered excellent quality and excellent value. So, I'm going to declare it good quality, and I'm going to declare the value as poor. To upgrade this to excellent quality and excellent value, it needs a slimmer Rehaut, laser engraved as per the date justamage. BGW9 needs to be improved, and ideally a micro adjustment clasp, and again the NH38A needs to be upgraded to the Miyota 9039. If they do those things with a V2, then yes, of course, it would justify €200 to €225 price point. But as it stands, good quality, poor value. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Baltany S4105. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.